It's been a while. For those of you who remember Cambridge Inside Out from, fall of 2013 to fall of 2014, we actually ran shows for a year. Back then it was, I should also first say, even that program was a kind of a revival of the original Cambridge Inside Out from many years ago. They ran from 1989 to 2001 with Glenn Kuchar, Barbara Ackerman, Marty Foster, Sandra Graham, Tom Rafferty. And then when we did it with Susanna Sagat and myself up until a year ago. And we may see Susanna again as well. So I would just want to personally thank her for all the time she put in. But now we have as producers, we have both me, Robert Winters, and
Judy Nathans.
Judy and I have actually known each other now for...
Oh my God, I was trying to count up the years. At least 22, maybe 25.
Right, and I think fair to say our primary connection was through
recycling,
advocacy through recycling over
when
the
it
years.
was still
Back in its infancy.
yes.
Right.
Right. We won't say when.
Yeah, we won't say when exactly. Yeah. So we'll be the producers of the program. We're going to try and do this as long as we can, and we'll do back-to-back half hours just like we did up to a year ago. It won't always be us. We may have other hosts here on some weeks as well, but we'll be continuing to produce the programs. As was the case, because it is an odd-numbered year, and odd-numbered years in Cambridge basically means municipal elections.
Yes.
And so since it's only, 3 weeks
Yes.
to the municipal election?
Right. It's November 3rd, right?
Yeah.
Is the election?
November 3rd, Tuesday,
And today
November
is a
3rd.
Tuesday, so 3 weeks.
So make sure you vote.
Yeah.
But it's a very short time frame. It's not like we're going to have a lot of time in 3 weeks to sort of run down every
Right.
single thing everybody could possibly want to know about municipal elections. But we'll do some, and then we'll continue on afterwards. Perhaps just to sort of get the ball rolling here, might want to just sort of say about a few upcoming events that are at least in part related to the election season. There's various interest groups, neighborhood groups, other parties around the city put together candidate forums. There's a tremendous number of them in the month of October. We've already had several of them. I think CCTV's actually recorded some, so in fact, actually just a few minutes ago, I just saw in the other room there was one playing on the other channel, but please don't change the channel. But there is, I think last week, the East Cambridge planning team had part one because there are 23 city council candidates, so they had part one, and where they had about half the candidates. And now, tonight, I believe, starting at 7:30 p.m. at the Broad Institute Auditorium.
Broad,
Exactly. At 415 Main Street, down around Kendall Square. They're having part two. So if you got some time, I encourage you to go down there. Tomorrow, I mean, I somehow imagine anybody who's watching this program is probably registered to vote, but just in case,
didn't know that.
if you're not, tomorrow is the deadline. By 8 p.m. tomorrow is the deadline to register to vote in the municipal election. So
how
if
do they do that? They have to go to the election commission?
I think you could even do it another way as long as it's sort of recorded and even postmarked. But really, go to the election commission.
Yeah, which is where now?
51 Inman Street.
Right.
And just if you're not registered to vote, you should register to vote.
Definitely.
Also tomorrow, Wednesday, October 14th, there will be a candidate forum on environmental specific issues organized by the group called Green Cambridge, which used to have a different name, I think. It was like Green Decade or something like that.
I think they're two different.
Really?
That other one may,
I think
I'm not sure, but
maybe did
they
a switcheroo.
combined, yeah.
But anyway, they're kind of the preeminent kind of all-purpose environmental entity around the city these days, and they're having an event Wednesday, October 14th, starting at, I think it runs 7 to 9:30 p.m. Could be 7:30, but hey, if you get there early, maybe you get cookies. Yeah. And that's at the Central Square YMCA. There's the auditorium. It's sort of up on the second floor. But you'll figure it out. There'll be people with signs there saying, vote for our guy. So that's this Oh, yeah, and then on Thursday, a very interesting
Yeah.
one. The group it calls itself A Better Cambridge, which is primarily focused on transit-oriented development. I think that's fair
Huh.
to say.
Okay.
You know, higher density population, transit-oriented development. They're having a candidates forum starting at 6:30 to 7:30, also at the Broad Institute.
6:30 to 9:30.
6:30 to 6:30
They
to
have to talk
9:30.
really fast.
Yeah. Right, some of them
Yeah.
can. And the moderator is Robin Young,
Yeah.
co-host of Here Now on WBUR. Actually, there was an event they had on housing or affordable housing recently with A Better Cambridge, and the room was packed.
Oh,
So-
it'll be packed, I'm
so
sure.
I imagine
And
this
also
will
she's
be
a
a-
local resident. which-
Yeah, so that looks like a good one. I'm actually going to be teaching then, so I'm going to
Oh.
completely miss it. So
But
please,
also at the
I know how it turned
Broad
out.
Institute.
also
yes?
at the Broad Institute,
right.
absolutely.
Yeah.
On Sunday, October 18th, at the Central Square Theater, the group Black Lives Matter Cambridge,
Hmm.
I think you're supposed to say it that way,
Yeah.
is having, I think it's an event for both city council and school committee candidates. That's, at least that's the latest I saw, which is 34 individuals, so
Oh
they
my
better really
goodness.
talk fast.
They have a big bold here, RSVP.
And
so-
yeah, it's actually the first time I've ever seen a candidate forum where
Yeah.
actually it's an RSVP event.
Hmm.
But that's taking place in the Central Square Theater, which is right next to where we are
Oh,
right
right.
now.
Yeah.
And they're right next door to the CCTV studios. One of the events that I think is always a good one and very well attended is the one that we put together with the Porter Square Neighbors Association and the Agassiz Neighborhood
Oh,
Council.
yes.
That one's very, very well
Yeah.
attended. I think they move them through with panels of, a third of the
Yes,
candidates.
I went to that.
It's pretty well, and actually Susanna Segat will probably be one of the facilitators. She
Oh,
usually
great.
is.
Okay.
Alice Wolf often is as well,
All right.
and some of the people, the good people of the Porter Square
Yes.
Neighbors
That
Neighbors
can get
Association.
very crowded too, if I remember.
That can
Yeah.
get very crowded, but they run a good
Yeah.
forum. So
Great.
definitely I recommend it. That's on when did I say that one?
That was
Tuesday,
Tuesday,
October
October
20th.
So a
So
week
we-
from today.
We run a show from 5:30 to 6:30, and
Ah,
then
right.
we'll hop on our bicycles and race right up
Yeah,
there to Porter
bicycles,
Square.
yeah.
And 6:30 to 9
We'll
at
take the red line, yeah.
is it University Hall Amphitheater at Lesley University. The one right near Porter Square, this T station. And there's others. I think maybe I'll just say one other, and then we'll talk about some other matters. But on Wednesday, October 21st, there's a school committee candidates forum sponsored by the Ward 6 Democratic City Committee, 6:30 to 8:30 at the main library lecture hall. Very good venue, I might add. So that's just some of what's going on just on the elections. Anything else important happening around here?
Yes, those of you that live in North Cambridge in the Monday trash route, you will be getting curbside compost pickup starting this Monday, October 19th.
Right, so I guess what do they call it? Curbside organics collection.
Curbside organics, yeah.
Right.
It's turned into compost,
Right.
right?
Right, I'm a long time home composter,
Right.
so I'll still be
This
using.
is different.
This is different.
Because if those of you that aren't vegetarians and have some meat or, stuff, you can
So-
put that into the...
Oh, so that's perfectly okay with you?
Yes, because it's
curbside
going to a
organics.
commercial compost facility. It's not like putting it in your backyard.
Right,
So you should have received or going to receive by tomorrow a bucket and some instructions, and so hopefully, and even myself will be knocking on somebody's door tomorrow night because we're doing a canvas of the whole neighborhood, 30 volunteers each night to...
is that like Krista, where you wrap the neighborhood in canvas? Oh, no?
Right.
Oh.
I wish. No, I'm not a big fan of knocking on doors. I know it's what politicians
I
like
used to do that
but-
years ago.
Yeah, it's hard. I did it for some candidates 4 years ago, but 8
Yeah.
years ago, excuse me.
Right.
So please look for that. Any problems with that or if you don't know about it, just go to the Cambridge City website and go to the recycling page. And we'll have more information about that next week.
Whenever
Yeah.
we kick off another program like this, I'm always reminded of things City Manager Richie Rossi said, because we worked with Richie back in the early days of getting
Yeah.
the volunteer recycling program together. He was kind of our inside facilitating person at City Hall.
No, I didn't know that.
Well, that's kind of why I feel a certain amount of
Yeah,
loyalty and
no,
friendship with him. Really,
that's
we
great.
go back a long way.
That's great.
And there one time he just, we were talking about some of the various transportation
Yeah.
initiatives, energy initiatives,
Yeah.
composting, whatever, and he just said it with this sort of wistful look. Just
Yeah.
said, isn't it amazing how far we've come? You
Oh.
know, in these 20 years. Now it's 25 years.
And I think we really do have one of the best recycling, waste reduction, call it what you want, compost systems. And the last thing I want to say is that there has been a pilot program going on since a year ago, April.
Right.
That of 600 households that were the pilot for this, big rollout. So that's been successful, and so please get more information if you need it. Or
And this is just North Cambridge, the Monday.
just the Monday trash
The
route.
Monday
Yeah.
trash
Hopefully, if this goes well and depends on lots of other factors, it will be expanded. But we would be the first, really, city of our size in the whole, probably on the East Coast.
Yeah.
I have to say, because Seattle, Portland, Toronto does it, some other places, but so far nobody on the East Coast.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how it
Yeah.
all works out.
Right. Okay.
So now we do have a municipal election coming up, as we have
Right.
now noted,
Referring to,
right?
yes.
And we want to talk a little bit about the election,
Mhm.
but I thought rather than just diving right in immediately to talking about candidates and whatever, but we do want to get to that, talk about
Mhm.
candidates and
Sure.
slates of candidates and a lot of the other mechanics of
Yeah, like
the
what
way
is a
things we do
slate? Yeah,
things.
things like that.
I thought I'd sort of just walk through just a little bit of stage setting, and I'll
Mhm.
just sort of give a little bit of the background about this. Is that, a lot of times, like, I've gone to some candidate forums, and
Mhm.
I think there was the one a Mid-Cambridge Neighborhood Association put together, and they say, here's the 6 issues. And I said,
Oh, right.
well, how did
Yeah.
you decide that?
Right. They
So-
decide.
Right.
Yeah.
So often it happens that there's an interested party or two will, they'll just sort of tell you what the
Mhm.
issues are and what you should care about. And I always thought to myself, if I had a kid in the public schools, which I don't, but if I did, I'd sort of say, I don't care about that stuff. I mean, I care about how my kid's doing in math or something like
Right.
that, right? So I always find it's a little ridiculous
Right.
when people do that. But one thing I think I can say with some objectivity is that if you just sort of at least look at the record of what, let's say, the Cambridge City Council has taken
Mhm.
up, discussed, initiatives begun or stalled, you can get at least a little bit of a taste for, what's going on around town, right? Now, again, of course, even that is sort of a function of my own picking and choosing.
Right,
myself.
but so anybody can do it. You could do it, but he's
Yeah.
doing it. So
Yeah. So just to sort of knock off a few bits right in pieces right in here, it's funny. It seems like ancient history now, but
Yeah.
there was this wonderfully contentious inaugural day mayoral election where it went back and forth, Denise Simmons, Leland Chung, Denise Simmons, and then
When was
eventually.
that? Was that recently?
No. That was
Oh,
back in
okay, yeah.
January of 2014, the beginning of the current
Okay.
city council term.
That's what I meant. That
Yeah,
was, okay.
yeah, and so it's sort of
The last
relatively
election.
recent.
Yeah.
Hey,
Well,
they-
no, but it was the last.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
After the last election.
I forgot about that.
Oh yeah, and so it began very contentiously. But people always say when you elect a mayor, then
Mm-hmm.
it'll take them forever to get along. Well, let me tell you, if they didn't get along, it wasn't because of that. Ultimately they got over that real quick. And David Marr became mayor, and Dennis Benson vice mayor,
Right.
and then sort of the process began. I was looking here at some of the things that were discussed or initiated, which are still ongoing, some of
Mhm.
which are resolved. For example, right away, the very first council meeting after inaugural, there was an update on what they call the Nexus Study for Incentive Zoning. I'm only mentioning that
Wow.
here now because, what is it now? That's January 2014. They finally
Wow.
passed the revisions to the incentive zoning, changing the fees, about tripling the fees.
So
That-
it is being tripled.
Yeah, it's being tripled.
From
That
what
was
to what?
from about it was about $4 and change
Uh-huh.
to $12.30
Wow.
per square foot
Per
of
square
new
foot.
development. I think they also changed the threshold of which new development qualifies. So it used to
Sure.
be only development above, maybe was it 30,000 square feet. Now I think it's either a much reduced or maybe no
To try to
bottom at
get
all.
some of the smaller.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
to sort of basically do that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I mentioned that only because it's a current issue. It just got
Yeah.
resolved and the changes were
Right.
ordained a couple weeks ago.
Right.
But that's how long it sometimes takes for matters that are pretty
Yes.
significant. Or also back in 2014, there was the big discussion about the future of what they call the Foundry Building over in
Oh,
East
yeah.
Cambridge, which some people wanted as an arts center, some people wanted for, what do they want? There were a lot of things that were floated.
Like a do-your-own kind of.
Yeah, it could have been
Yeah,
that. There was
yeah.
some startup space for entrepreneurs.
Right.
and trying to find a way that's sort of financially sustainable was sort of the big dilemma. So,
Right.
so they talked about that then, and then they eventually said, we floated the idea, can the Cambridge Redevelopment Authority be involved in this? Well, now, not only are they involved, I mean, now they've appointed a Foundry Advisory Committee,
Oh,
and they've passed the appropriate legislation basically to allow the Cambridge Redevelopment Authority to sort of facilitate the entire everything happening there. So we'll see what happens. So again, I'm just pointing it out because
yeah, takes a
things
while.
and
Yeah.
actually the discussion of that even began
Even
a
before
couple of
that.
years
Yeah.
earlier. Honestly, it's been going on for quite some
Mhm.
time. Another thing that was really big, sort of funny how whatever goes around comes around.
Yeah.
There was a lot of controversy about who violated the open meeting law. I think it was
Geez.
there was somebody said when there was some zoning passed in Kendall Square, somebody filed something with the state. Most of it got thrown out. They basically, I think what they said is that none of the councils did anything wrong, but maybe the council procedures needed to be corrected,
Huh.
and they were.
Yeah.
So now I think it was on the last city council agenda. We have yet another person filing an open meeting law complaint. This one has to do with the formation of candidate slates, though.
Oh, that's
And it's a
interesting.
candidate filing the
Oh, my
complaint,
goodness.
so kind of weird. So anyway, another big thing that was really, really big back in 2014 was this matter of the Sullivan Courthouse. The old Edward J. Sullivan Courthouse, Middlesex County Courthouse in East Cambridge. Eventually, by late summer or early fall, the planning board said okay to the special permits that were requested, but then there were lawsuits. Most of the lawsuits have actually been thrown out, but not everything.
What were the lawsuits?
There were
pertaining to?
abutters that were claiming that, there was this issue about is the Sullivan Courthouse a pre-existing non-conforming use legally? Can they be obliged to basically tear the building down and not build it to the current height and density that's there?
Uh-huh.
It's an interesting question, but I think from a legal point of view, I think it was a relatively open and shut case.
But who owned? Is it the county that owns
This,
that?
it was the state, it was really the county, but the county government is essentially dissolved. So it
Huh.
went to the Division of Capital Assets Management for the state, who really didn't want to listen to nobody, no how.
Yeah.
And ultimately, they put it up to bid, and Leggett McCall was the successful bidder who earned the right to do the development of the project.
But for what purpose?
They proposed largely sort of office, entrepreneurial space, 24 units
so
of
it's
housing.
so there's no guidelines on what to do with it. Whoever the highest bidder can do.
Whatever the zoning allows,
Zoning,
basically.
all right, but
Yeah.
the state has no. You
yeah.
can't make this municipal or something.
Yeah, I think just because of the scale of the project, it
Sure.
had to go through a
Zoning
special permit
yeah.
process because of traffic impacts. There's still some unresolved issues.
Right.
But I always find it interesting
Yeah.
to see things that were initiated at one point, how long it really
Oh
takes
my gosh,
for them
especially
to
in
get
Cambridge.
resolved.
I mean, really.
Yeah, very much, and very
Permits
much in
and stuff.
Cambridge. Now, another thing, again, in the category of not quite entirely
Yeah.
resolved was, some of the rhetoric around the 2013 election was about, well, Cambridge has no master plan.
Huh.
So come April of last year, there were competing orders for a process to do a citywide planning process, a master planning process.
Like going out how many years? Like
Well, they didn't say. I mean, I think the original estimates were ridiculously lowball. They said, in 18 months or something like that. Well, it's probably going to be more like 3 years, and it's barely begun now.
Is it something cities do?
Well, I think Cambridge has always maintained plans, but
Right.
neighborhood by neighborhood.
Yeah.
They had something from 92 or 3 called the Sustainable
Yeah.
Cambridge, or Toward a Sustainable Cambridge, the growth planning document
Uh-huh.
that's largely been a
Yeah.
core of a lot of the planning studies. But the thing is that process, I think the big competition was, should the Community Development Department be entrusted with the process, or should the Ordinance Committee, which was chaired by Councilor Carlone, who had a rather different point of view,
Uh-huh.
be in charge of it. So they came to a compromise ultimately, which was sort of good. But I like to think that was kind of where the
Yeah.
beginning of some of the fractiousness in the
right.
city council kind of really got started.
Yeah.
Right in there,
Sure.
about the different points of view about
Right.
that. So anyway, they did settle on some things eventually. I'm not going to sort of go through everything in
Yeah.
here, but
Well, if people want it, now you go to every meeting that you can, and you do it through your civic journal?
Yeah, I mean,
Write
I go to most of the Cambridge
Yeah.
City Council meetings. I'm going to honestly say I don't always stay to the end anymore because
No,
it
but you
gets a bit
capture some salient
old.
points, that's how
I try.
you can go back and,
Yeah.
so if somebody could find that out, I mean, there's other ways.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I probably should do is
Yeah.
write up more of a kind of a post-meeting summaries. I've done that a few times, but I don't do it
Mhm.
regularly.
Well, you do
So-
have a life, you do.
I do have life, and I always,
You're doing, this is a public service, and I think it's great.
well, hope springs eternal.
Yeah.
I often say, well, the Cambridge Chronicle, that's sort of their job. They always have a reporter there. My hope
True.
would be that
Yeah.
ultimately they would do a pretty good job
Yeah.
of that, and I would entrust them to that. But
And actually CCTV has the neighborhood media, do they,
I don't know that they
they
so
don't
much
really
cover.
do stuff on city council, but they try to
Yeah.
cover issues, which is great.
I
Yeah.
think one of the problems about city council coverage
Yeah.
is that you go there and if you don't get you
Yeah,
you either fall in love with it
yeah.
like
or
I
say,
did,
"Oh my
or you
gosh,
get
I
sick
can't
of
take
it
another
and
hour of
you
this."
don't
Yeah.
come back.
Right.
Yeah,
But
so
you,
that's
but
kind
you
of
do,
difficult.
yeah, I mean, I do think it's great to go to your archives.
Yeah, so I try and keep a fair amount of it. Now the other one of the other more contentious things that happened, which is kind of not really an ongoing matter now, but
Mhm.
around midsummer last year there was a zoning petition called the Carlone petition that
Yeah,
wanted
that
to
confuses
transfer
me, yeah.
some of what they call the special permit granting authority from the planning board to
right.
the city council.
Because they thought it was corrupt or something, not
I
corrupt,
think
but just a little
I
more,
think the argument.
too many pockets aligned, or, I don't
Well,
know.
some people said that, but the thing is that I think there were people who were bothered by the fact that most special permits are granted.
Oh, right, there's
But-
no
and-
real,
But there was tremendous
like
misunderstanding.
rubber stamping it.
Yeah, but that's not how it works. What
Yeah.
happens is that if you're a property owner and you want to build
Yeah.
a building or do a project,
Yeah,
you can either do it as they say as of right,
Uh-huh.
do it under the zoning without any exceptions, or you can go again within the zoning. There's a
get
special
a
permit
yeah.
process, so it's
Okay.
not a variance.
not a variant, but I mean,
Basic-
you apply to get a,
You go for
Yeah.
a special permit process, which basically says if you agree to do that,
uh-huh,
you follow all the conditions, you will get your approvals. But it gives the city an opportunity to bargain with you. So
I
if they
see.
want to try
Yeah.
and cajole the property owner to
do a
do a
little
better
more,
transportation planning,
yeah.
or better energy reduction, or make a LEED
Mhm.
gold building, really high
And do they
environmental
do that
standards.
as a rule?
Yep. Oh yeah, pretty regularly. That's really what the special permit granting authority is about. Is basically rather than just boilerplate saying, okay,
Yeah.
every building alike meet the zoning, it
Yeah.
basically allows a little more flexibility
And
and
you think
creativity.
it's being used that way, or?
For the most part, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, people made a big deal out of the fact that there were like 50 projects seeking under Article 19. Doesn't matter what that means.
Yeah,
And then they all got their special permits, but I don't think that was such a
Yeah.
surprise if you understand what the
so
process
what happened
means.
with that?
Well, the Carlin petition basically went,
Uh-huh,
it was very contentious. It
Right.
never had a chance of getting more
Yeah.
than 2 votes.
mm,
And then it never actually, when the ordinance committee report came in, usually you pass it to a second reading and then that puts it in the queue for ordination. It never even got passed to a second reading. So,
wow,
which I thought was sort of a merciful way to handle something
Yeah.
that had no chance, but
yeah,
it really split people
Sure.
a lot. And there were people, advocates on one side were lining up totally for it, and then
Yeah.
advocates on the other side were saying this is totally crazy. But again, I think it was an important part of the history of the
Mhm.
last couple of years, just to
Yeah.
kind of see where things were headed.
sure,
And then heading into this year, and again, I mean, I could linger with many of these
Right.
things here, but going into this year, there was actually one event which was probably one of the most pivotal events of all, which was actually the death of Brian Murphy, who was the
was that this year?
yeah, it was in February of 2015, head of the Community Development Department. And many of the initiatives that sort of intrinsically involved Community Development Departments just got derailed because it was such an incredibly earth-shattering event for everybody.
Yeah,
And it took a long while for everybody to sort of get squared away. I think
Yeah.
most people are okay now. I think Iram Farouk has now been appointed as permanent head of the Community Development Department. Well, whatever permanent means,
right,
right?
yeah,
And things are moving forward, so,
mhm,
anyway, those are just some, I think maybe we have about a minute to go in this first
this,
half hour.
yeah.
We'll pick it up a little bit there.
this kind of segues, we can talk more about the
Yeah.
slate stuff.
Yeah, so we'll talk a little bit more about candidates and slates and whatever in the
Right.
second half hour. One other thing, big pivotal event, I'll just say here, just in the last minute, was actually I'm looking right across the street here, was what they call the Mass and Maine petition. It was the Normandy Twining petition, for which was passed 7-2, I believe, which will actually one day, presumably, lead to a significant building, a residential building with ground floor retail. It's very consistent with a lot of the things that were promoted during the K2C2 process, whatever that is. But it was really contentious, and again, a bit of a stage setter. And a lot of the people, when they talk about the issues this year, this is definitely a part of them. So anyway, we'll be back. As we're counting down the last glorious 15 seconds. We'll be back in 3 whole minutes.
All right. Oh, we got 3 minutes?
But until then, this has been Cambridge
Inside Out.